everyone. All right. So, going to talk about keeping your coins and not losing them, and also how to make them outlive you, meaning someone else to be able to access them when you're not around. Might sound like a boring topic, but it's actually super interesting. And the reason for that is that, you can't really do both. Having like self-custody, and also when you are not around, have someone else access your coins, because the whole point of self-custody is that you're the only one who can spend your coins, right? So in this, I'm gonna just discuss first, like basically how to do self-custody in a kind of basic way. I'm trying to be like really accessible in this talk. Then I'm going to give a lot of my thoughts on the topic. So a lot of opinions in there. And then I'm going to cover the inheritance thing. And in the end, I'm going to explain a little bit more about how we can actually mix both this self-custody aspect while still keeping the inheritance part where, like, even if you lose everything or if you die or anything like that, somebody else can still access your coins. So when you listen to this talk, you can listen to it as like an individual, obviously, like that's really how it's formulated here. But you can also think as if you were a business, or if you have a business or an organization, a family office, anything like that. You can also take this as like, what happened if one of my employees disappear, leave the company and refuses to sign transaction, or anything like that, right? So this is a pretty broad topic overall, and I hope everyone will learn something. So as I just said, self-custody and inheritance. If you're just using any of the tools out there today, except Liana, basically, or other, time lock wallet, but there is not many, there is basically no way to have both self-custody and inheritance. Again, just to make sure everyone understood, self-custody means you are the only one in control of your coins, and inheritance means you are dead. So, you can't send your coins to your family. So another thing I will cover, obviously, is security versus safety. So what I mean by safety here is really like not losing your coins. So how safe is it for you to put your money in this wallet and leave it there? Security covers two things. Security in Bitcoin typically is about like the online threat, right? Like having a malware on your computer, things like that, on your phone. You don't want your coins to be gone. But also, and that's starting to be, I think, a little bit more taken in consideration by Bitcoiners, it's the physical threat resilience, right? So as numbers go up, the bad guys are also probably going to ramp up their operations. And you kind of want your wallet to be resilient to that, especially if we're thinking about multi-generational wealth, right? So if you think about your family and then maybe the kids of your kids, we might be talking about large amount of money, and over all these years, you kind of want to be resilient to physical attacks as well. So the very basic self-custody that is very decent today, and that would probably fit the need of 99% of the people, excluding physical threat, would be something like this. So having a hardware wallet, signing device. I don't like the term hardware wallet because it's not a wallet. Anyways, so a signing device, and then for the safety, keep your mnemonic on like a metal plate or on a crypto steel or anything like that, where that in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, the ink is not going to disappear or anything like this. You're not going to have a fire in your house and then the paper is gone. So the metal backup is also very important. It's very cheap. So this is like the basic setup. If you already have that, you're doing pretty good. If you don't have that, or if you have your money at Coinbase or any other custodian, you should probably start moving it if you want to keep it for like 20, 30 years, because all of these custodians are probably going to get stuff happen to them. As you can see in the past 5 to 10 years, they disappear over time. So if you have a very long-term thing, don't leave your money on a custodial service. So here is your basic setup, right? Hardware wallet, metal backup, and you're good. Of course, you can go further. So now if you're a little bit more technical, or if you spent a little bit more time into your self-custody setup, you probably have looked into some of these options. The ones that is basically recommended for anything related to physical threat is a geo-distributed multi-sig. So when people talk about multi-sig, and everyone talks about multi-sig, usually it doesn't mean have two hardware wallets or multiple hardware wallets and keep them in the same place, because that kind of defeats the purpose. There is still some advantage to have a multi-sig where all your hardware are in the same place, but they are basically insignificant for the average person. So when we talk about multi-sig, it's about having two very different locations where you keep one signing device in one place and the other one in another one, and typically in another country, right? So the point here is that if you are under threat, you cannot realistically, within a day, access both locations and get your funds taken from you. So it's not good enough if it's like one in your place and one at your neighbor's, because under threat, you might actually go there and sign it. So if you're looking into multi-sig, please consider that two different places, far away from each other. Same for your backups. So if you have a multi-sig, you also have, let's say, 2 mnemonics now, or 3, depending how many signers you have. Don't leave your mnemonics in the same place, because same problem. If someone can access it, they will. So keep them as well separated in different countries. Passphrases. So many people use passphrases because it's super scary to have a mnemonic. So this, seed phrase, there's a lot of term for that. I'm calling it the mnemonic, your 24 words or 12 words. Many people are afraid of having that in clear text. So basically, not encrypted with no protection over it, because if someone accesses it, well, you're going to lose your coins. So a lot of people feel much safer to add what we call a passphrase on top that's going to basically encrypt that. And so you need both your 12 or 24 words plus this passphrase to spend from it. The problem is people are very bad at passphrases. So if you want to have a good password on top of your mnemonic, if it's good enough, there is a pretty high chance you're going to forget it. If you don't forget it, it's probably not good enough. So you are into something like this where, like, thinking about 10 years again or 15 years or whatever, if you have a good passphrase, you pretty much need to back up the passphrase. So again, it's like a second backup you need to keep in a different location, because if it's in the same place, why do you have a passphrase? And things like that, right? So passphrases, don't use the name of your cat or things like that. We're talking about very random and complex passwords. Otherwise, it makes no sense. Shamir, I personally don't use Shamir. So Shamir is not really something I'm caring much about, but it's something people are starting to use now, I think. So Shamir is about kind of splitting your mnemonic into multiple shards, and you need a certain threshold of them to be able to recover your mnemonic. So let's say you have 3 shards and you just need 2 to rebuild your mnemonic. It's pretty cool, but I mean, compared to that, I think it's just better to go directly to a multi-sig where you have multiple seeds in different places, and you also then get the multiple signers. Because when we talk about Shamir, it's just for one signer, right? You could do a Shamir for each of your signers, but hey. A backup should be complete. So people tend to overestimate the risk of theft and underestimate the risk of loss. And this is pretty sad because there is a lot of stories of Bitcoiners who lost everything because they don't remember a passphrase, because they moved location over years and they actually forgot where they put their mnemonic, or they lost it in the trip, or things like that. This is pretty horrible because it's their fault, right? Like, you lost it, nobody even took it from you, it's still out there, but you will never find it again. Maybe your passphrase was too complex and you actually forgot it because, hey, you're not as young as you were 10 years ago. So a backup should be complete. What that means is that if you use a passphrase, a good one, you should make a backup of that passphrase. Few people do that, sadly. But again, think about that. So yeah, self-custody is easy, but when you start counting all of the issues I was mentioning, it's not that simple. You need multiple locations. You need multiple backups in different locations. If you use passphrases, then you need to start thinking, oh, is it good enough? You need a backup of your passphrase. It's a lot of layers and layers over each other. Also, you need to remember all of this. So I don't know if any of you were a Samurai wallet user, for example. But basically, Samurai was forcing you to use a passphrase. And so they would give you the mnemonic. And a lot of people just were writing down the mnemonic and completely forgot that they set up a passphrase when they created this Samurai wallet. And then you have, oh, this is my mnemonic for my Samurai. And you type your 12 or 24 words, and, well, your balance is 0. And like, why? And so you have a lot of questions like that on Google, like, why is my Samurai wallet balance 0? It's like, yeah, you need to add a passphrase on top. But yeah, who actually wrote it down? Not many users. So one of the solutions into like security versus safety and how do you actually use it, because if you use Bitcoin, you don't want to go to different countries all the time. So one of the things is to use multiple wallets, right? So you can have like a Lightning wallet on your phone. That's a hotkey typically, so you don't have a hardware wallet to use that, right? Lightning is hot. Then you might think, if you're actually using Bitcoin a lot, like on-chain transactions for pretty large transactions, you might have, let's say, a single sig you can use anytime. And then for your savings, go for a multi-sig in multiple geographies, right? If you're a business, please use multi-sig for everything. It doesn't really make sense when you can have multiple people who can sign to just have one signer. Yeah, I'm not going to give examples here, but yeah, I see a lot of very bad examples where people are actually using one signer for very large, very large amount of Bitcoin. 4 digits, very large amounts. And they just have one key, and they don't see where the problem is to actually share the key between the business partners, right? It's horrible, because if the funds are stolen, you don't even know who did it. Like, it's the same key. So don't do that. BIP85. BIP85 is a super interesting thing in Bitcoin that lets you basically, in this setup, you have your multi-sig, you have your backup on Metal. You can actually use one of these keys that you have to derive other mnemonics without like somebody finding these other mnemonics being able to come back to the Metal backup. So you can have like a different layer of security where like the only Metal backup you would have in this setup are the one for the multi-sig. But then you can generate another key for the single sig, and then another one for your Lightning wallet. And these keys, you can always get them back from the Metal backup you have. But even if your phone is breached or the single signer, somebody managed to get the mnemonic from it, they cannot get back to your multi-sig setup. So BIP85, it just, for people like me who have been in Bitcoin for a long time, it's a lifesaver because I had like backups and backups and backups and backups of all the wallets I've used over the years, all the mobile wallets, all the hardware wallets, all my setups, and you keep them because you're always afraid that you send some coins to an old wallet, so you kind of want to keep all of your backups. So with this, super cool. Now you do your backups on Metal once, and you can derive as many kind of child wallets from it. Okay, now I'm gonna get into the more opinionated side of this. So collaborative multi-sig is a thing that is really hot right now. So a lot of companies are doing that. What I mean by collaborative multi-sig is basically like a 2 of 3 multi-sig, where one of the key is held by a third party, typically your wallet operator. There are quite a lot of companies offering this kind of services. You probably have heard of them. So basically, any kind of multi-sig wallet today that you would have as with a subscription or something like that would be something like this. Why do I not like this? So I really don't like this. And I don't like this for multiple reasons, but the main one is that it's a false sense of security. What are you paying for? You're paying for self-custody because, of course, you don't want the provider to have 2 keys. You don't want them to control the wallet. So you have 2 keys yourself, right? So that means that in the case of a physical threat or something like that, well, somebody can get your 2 keys, and the third-party provider cannot really help you. Now, you could use them with like spending policies. You could say, oh, they are going to make sure that I cannot spend more than 1 BTC per day, 0.1 BTC per day. But then again, you have 2 keys, so you could bypass these restrictions. So what's the point? Then some people are like, oh yeah, but if I lose my key, I can go to them. Yeah, if you lose one of your keys. But what are the chances that are like you're just losing one of your keys, but not both? It's a very weird setup. Like if you lose both of your keys, they cannot help you. They only have 1 key. And now if you start thinking about inheritance, well, they only have 1 key. Again, they cannot spend from the wallet. So if you die and none of the 2 keys were shared with your family, nothing they can do, right? So I really don't like this setup because people think it's solving problems, and I actually don't agree with that. I think it's just a very niche use case of you losing 1 key and only 1 key, and that's where they are very useful because they can help you basically recover that. I do like something else though, which is cosigners. And cosigners is the way I think these businesses should evolve, where they are going to be co-signing your transactions to put in place restrictions that you decide, of course, in advance about what I was saying, maximum amount per transaction, per day, maybe whitelist of addresses you can only sign to. So that's basically preventing someone to force you to do a transaction that's outside of these limits. But to make that in a good way, you have to use a strict multi-sig. So let's say a 2 of 2, not a 2 of 3, because otherwise you can bypass this. So in a 2 of 2, you cannot bypass this restriction you put in place. And I think this is super interesting. So we're going to keep talking about this a little bit, because to me that's kind of like the future of Bitcoin, especially if you are not waiting for things like covenants. You can do things that are basically Bitcoin covenants, but just by using a cosigner, so a trusted party to enforce it. And yeah, as I was saying, adding inheritance, now we're talking about like the complex thing. How are we going to give access to someone else while I want to be in self-custody, it's very hard. And also, I don't want to share keys, because sharing keys is terrible, okay? Never share a private key. I know you probably do that if you have a kind of an inheritance thing in place. You might have, let's say in the early setup I was showing, one hardware device and your metal backup. If you want kind of inheritance, the way people are doing it today is that, okay, I put a copy of my mnemonic in an envelope, and I just write, don't open this envelope before I die. And you just hope they are not opening the envelope before you die, which is kind of fair, because like it's your family, you trust them. But what you also hope is that nobody is going to rob them, that they are going to put the same amount of security into keeping this key and this envelope in a safe place and not somewhere like on the coffee table at home. And this is starting to be scary. And another thing, which is the main one actually, when you start sharing keys like this, is that if the money is gone one day, who are you going to blame? Because it's the same key. You don't know if the leak comes from your computer, from your hardware, or if it's from your family. So if the money is gone, you basically have lost your money, which is bad, but you also pretty much have lost trust to your family, but you cannot even prove anything. So basically you fucked up your life as well, right? So do not share keys. This is what people are doing today, right? Everyone's laughing, but I'm sure you guys do that. So yeah, playing with fire here. So can we fix this? The answer is yes. So there is a way, of course. I'm here to shield my stuff a little bit as well. Don't share keys. Time fixes this. So time, there is a concept of time locks in Bitcoin, right? When I say time locks, or when people say time locks, the only thing they have in mind is like, oh, I can block my coins for a specific amount of time. And maybe that's cool. Let's say I want to do a gift to my children, and I only want to be able to spend them when they are 18, right? Sure, you can do that with time locks, but I don't think they are interesting for that. What they are interesting for is to actually lock spending conditions of your Bitcoin. So you can have conditions in the script, in the Bitcoin script, that works right now. So that's your keys. And then you can have other conditions that can be valid only in the future. And that would be your family keys, right? And so in that case, you can be in self-custody where you are the only one who can spend from your wallet. But you can, if something happens to you, your family can just wait and then get access to your coins. And this is super cool. So this is basically something we do with the wallet I'm working on, which is called Liana. We're not the only ones doing this, but at the current time, we're the only wallet really focusing on this. So if you're looking into this kind of time locks, which are enforced by the Bitcoin blockchain, obviously, I'm talking about free open source software here, no trusted third parties. Bitcoin does this, right? We're using opcodes that are from 2015, so there is nothing new in there. It's nothing bleeding edge. The only kind of bleeding edge stuff we're using is called Miniscript, which is not that complex. But yeah, very few wallets are supporting that right now. And so again, the time locks we're using are not to block your coins. They are to block some ways to spend your coins, right? Very different thing. And so it can look like this. So basically, this is like a basic, kind of example of what Liana can look like. So the typical wallet, you have your what we call the primary path. So how you spend your coins from a day-to-day perspective. That could be a single sig. That could be a multi-sig. Anything you want, right? You want a 40 out of 40, you can do that, right? There's no limits. You can use a single sig, you can use multi-sig, anything you want. Then you have your recovery keys, because why only using an inheritance key? You can have many layers in this. So you can say, okay, I'm going to do a 2 of 2. So 2 of my keys, right, in 2 different countries. And in case, one of these get destroyed or stolen, I would like to be able to spend my coins. And 2 of 2 is not great. It's not like a 2 of 3 where I can actually lose one. But I don't need to do a 2 of 3 here. I can then go down another layer in this recovery key. And this recovery key could be maybe this 2 of 2 that become a 1 of 2, or this 2 of 2 that become a 2 of 3, or a completely different key that I have as a backup key. You can do anything you want with this, right? And then you have the inheritance key, which is the actual envelope you're going to give to your family with an actual mnemonic in it. But even if they open it or if somebody steals it, they cannot do anything with this unless you stop using your wallet for a long time. And then all of this condition unlocks over time, right? So this is a way to do both self-custody and have access to things like inheritance or third-party recoveries. I'm going to some quick examples. I think I will have time. Yeah, I will have time for questions. So if you have questions, you can ask them afterwards. So yeah, the very basic thing you can do is like having two signing devices. You have one that's valid right now, one that you keep somewhere else. That's going to be your backup. In this setup, you can even not do a backup of your primary device. So if you are scared of like somebody breaking into your house and finding a mnemonic, just don't have a mnemonic. You don't need one, because you're going to have another one that's time-locked. So even if someone breaks into your house, steal the mnemonic, they can't do anything with it. As long as you still have the primary hardware, you can move the funds elsewhere, and the thief cannot do anything with it, right? Very basic setup there. Then you can add something else that we call a safety net, and that's what I was talking about for the 2 of 3 providers a little bit earlier. So my company, as I was saying, we do only trustless stuff. We're not interested in having keys. We're not interested in being a regulated entity. We're just doing software. So all of these key providers, all of these companies that do 2 of 3 right now where they have a key, they can actually put a key as a very last recovery path. So it means that if every single one of your recovery option and inheritance option and all of that are lost and nobody managed to sign with them, then after the longest time lock, they can actually contact your third-party provider and be like, hey, can you help me recover my coins? And in this case, that's like kind of an insurance on your coins, right? So they can't do anything about your coins. They can't steal it from you. They have no access to it. But if you lose all of your recovery options, then there's unlock. And so even if you lose everything, then they can recover. Even if your family doesn't manage to recover your coins, or maybe they lost this envelope you gave them 20 years ago, they can still go to the provider and recover your coins. And the way we do that right now, the provider doesn't even know how many Bitcoins you have. They don't have any view over your Bitcoins, because we're not, like for the technical users here, we're not sharing the descriptor with them. So you as a user have the descriptor. They only have a key. They don't know what the key belongs to or corresponds to. And so you have to provide the descriptor, or we can provide the descriptor to the signer when they need. So it's really cool for these service providers, because from a legal perspective, no law enforcement entity can ask them, for example, how much money does this user have? They have no clue, right? And this is never supposed to be used. It's just a disaster recovery in case you have lost all of your recovery options. So my opinion, much, much better than a 2 of 3 multi-sig. Inheritance, we already covered that. You can, of course, have this safety net thing after the inheritance, just in case your family loses it or doesn't manage to recover your coins. Then you can do multi-sig, as I was saying. You can do anything you want, basically, right? So this is pretty cool already for like people who are afraid of physical threat for their own stack, but they want something simple for the family in case something happens to them. Then you can do things like that for businesses. 3 of 3, if you have 3 co-founders in a company, all 3 need to sign, but you never know what could happen to one of them. So after some time, it gets down to a 2 of 3. And if 2 were in a plane crash together, then it goes down to a 1 of 3. I actually don't like this, because this is unsafe, right? 1 of 3 is just a race condition in the end. Any one of the 3 can try to steal the money. Sure, there is trust. You kind of co-founded a business together, but it's not great. What I prefer is this. You can actually expand keys as well. So now you can have your 3 of 3 that become a 3 of 4, maybe with a key held by your board of director, or maybe with a key held by a lawyer, or whoever third party you trust. So if one of the keys is lost, you actually have another key that can then sign, but it's not valid at the beginning, right? Only if a problem happens. And then you can keep extending that. So even 2 of the co-founders dying in a plane crash, you can still have 2 more third parties being able to sign there. I can keep going there. You can do 2 of 2 that become another 2 of 2 with a different set of keys. That's actually also very useful. So typically a 2 of 2 for you, 2 of 2 for your family. Or for businesses, you can do things like that, like rotation of employees, key employees, things like that. So you can do a lot of cool stuff. And something I didn't put in my slides, but I think, I still have a bit of time. So this cosigner stuff I was talking about in the beginning, to put restrictions on yourself, you can actually put it there as like one of these keys, right? So 2 of 2, 1 is mine, 1 is this trusted party that is going to enforce I cannot spend more than 0.1 Bitcoin per day. Of course, it's a trusted party, so if it stops responding, I cannot spend my coins. So then it can rotate to another provider having the same set of conditions, but now if provider A doesn't reply, I'm switching to provider B, enforcing the exact same restrictions, but now I can rotate between providers, so I know that if they stop doing their job, it's fine. My coins are not locked, and I cannot bypass myself. I still have this restriction pushed again and again. And you can keep doing that pretty much forever. So yeah, one of the things about self-custody is to do it right. Not to do it right now, but to do it right now. Because numbers go up typically. And so redoing your self-custody is not something you do often. It's typically something you do it once in a good way. And then you need a really massive change to do it again. So most of you who have already done this metal backup thing and shared the key with the family, you might take a few years before switching to something like Liana or equivalent. But yeah, you should probably start thinking about it before it's too late. And that's it. So I'm Kevin from Wizard Sardine. The product I was talking about is Liana. And I think I still have a few minutes for questions, yeah?
Absolutely. Round of applause, everyone. Does anyone have a question? Oh, we got a question in the back. Okay, so while I walk over there, guys, I can't emphasize enough how important this is. Self-custody, I think, is a revolution. I think if you don't take self-custody of your keys, they're not really your keys. And also, you have family, right? And also, you don't want to get $5 wrench attack, so multi-sig is really important. So there's so many different solutions to this, and I think is a very clever one as well. Anyways, here you go.
Hi, first, thank you. Very, very interesting. Just two questions. The first is the inheritance keys is created at first, so together with the master key. So it's a sort of backup. It's a sort of backup of the master key, but with the time lock inside, more or less.
Yeah, technically speaking, you would use two different keys. So let's consider signing devices, right? Let's say you buy two signing devices from whichever brand you want. One of each will have its own 24 words or 12 words, right? So when you set up your signing device the first time, it gives you this private key. And so when you set up a wallet like this, you need to provide what we call the XPub of each wallet. So you plug in the hardware wallet, you select this one for being the primary one, plug in the second one, and set this one as inheritance. Then you can choose the time difference between the two, and that's it. You can just put it in the envelope and give it to your family.
So basically, you create the wallet, so the keys.
Yes, right? But you could, like if your family already uses Bitcoin and already has a signer, you can use theirs. You don't have to set up the key for them, right? They can use the keys they have already and add this one into the Liana wallet. Yeah.
So my family in the future will take this key and may insert it into MetaMask, I don't know, or not
Bitcoin,
MetaMask,
not
MetaMask, but yeah, you get the point.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and so this is using something called Miniscript, which is a Bitcoin standard. It's not used by many wallets, but it's used by Bitcoin Core, so you know it will be available in the future, no matter what happened to my company or anything like that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much.
All right, we got a question in the back. Yeah, you guys have to fight over the microphone.
Thank you. I personally like the passphrases because I think they can be disguised, so you can maybe use a different backup method other than the 24 words that someone knows what to look for. And also some hardware wallets implements that, so it's not obvious that you have a passphrase. You can use also multiple passphrases to access different funds like hot wallets or in any case to differentiate your wallets.
Yep.
So I don't get it. Why I should use the BIP85 in place of multiple passphrases?
Oh yeah, no, you could. It's just that BIP85 makes sure that you don't have to memorize anything. You just need your 24 words or whatever, and then you can derive the other ones. So it's just more practical. You don't have to think about the different passphrases you entered. You can just derive it on your hardware wallet, and then you can re-enter that on your phone or whatever for the hotkeys. It also ensures that you use the right entropy for it. So your passphrase, you never know if it's long enough. BIP85 is using the right entropy for that.
Awesome, everybody. Please give a round of applause to Kevin. You got 30 seconds. 30. Could you ask in 30 seconds?
Do you have any tutorial about that? Or
I'm terrible at doing tutorials, but there is some on YouTube, yeah.
So did you just say tutorial? You're going to want to hear the next keynote. Okay, well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but you guys could talk. But anyways, yeah. Kevin, everybody.
Thanks.